Hello friends, welcome to the wonderful world of stories and why we tell them from Culture Katha. Mahabharata, as we all know, is a war epic. Its central theme is war. In my first video of this series on the Mahabharata, we've already seen how the oldest portions of the epic that belong to the later Vedic period related to the war. These war books describe in detail the battlefield exploits of its key protagonists, particularly those of Arjuna. At the start of the Kurukshetra war, even when Arjuna expresses his reluctance to fight his own clansmen, Krishna directs him to rise up to the occasion and fight like a true blue warrior. Arjuna eventually agrees to fight the war and also wins it with the support of his brothers, of course. We find that the epic in most parts hails Arjuna's brand of military heroism over Yudhishtra's brand of passive pacifism. Wars and warriors were glorified, and soldiers dying on battlefields were believed to attain the heavens. Indeed, the epic itself ends with both Karna and Duryodhana attaining the heavens despite their several acts of adharma. Why? Because they both died fighting on the battlefield, and that was a warrior's ultimate achievement, his nirvana. But if all the warriors are to be glorified, why does the epic give special status to Arjuna? Why is he considered the most accomplished of the Pandavas? Why are there simply more stories about him in the epic? Remember, he was the one to win Draupadi's hands at her Swayamvara. And he was also the one to kill some of the important warriors on the Kaurava side, including Bhishma, Jayadratha and Karna in the Kurukshetra battle. So what was so special about Arjuna that he was given such a prominent role in the epic? When I pondered over this question, I came up with two reasons why Arjuna was hailed as the chief protagonist of the epic. One big reason, I think, was the fact that Arjuna was an archer. And archers were clearly a cut above the other warriors using weapons such as spears, swords or maces. Let me explain why. Arrows are the most useful weapons in a battlefield. They were ancient man's long-range missiles. They could kill people across fairly long distances. For this reason, archers were considered an integral and prominent part of the armed forces. Only a skillful archer with his quiver continuously replenished with arrows could take on huge armies on battlefields. Do you remember the war scenes from B.R. Chopra's Mahabharata that was aired on Doordarshan in the late 80s? Where they showed hundreds of arrows hurtling through the air across long distances and wounding and killing hundreds of soldiers. Well, those scenes were definitely exaggerated visualizations, but the fact remains that no other weapon, be it a sword, spear or mace, could be used for such mass destruction. Swords and maces, or gada as we call them, were weapons that could certainly be used to fight duels, but they were not weapons of mass destruction, weapons that could have maximum impact in minimum time. Secondly, several astras or magical celestial weapons such as the Narayanastra or the Pashupatastra were probably yoked to an arrow, or its powers or the astra's powers manifested in an arrow, which was then released with the help of a bow. So even the use of powerful astras often rode on the skills of a good archer. And unlike the wielders of other weapons, archers were best placed to use chariots on the battleground. Chariots or rathas, as you know, were important to cover long distances on the warfield, to seek out the enemy who was far away, or to fight a moving target. The special status given to archery is evident from the fact that the knowledge of archery is itself equated to the Vedas, and it's called Dhanur Veda. Also, have you noticed how very often the bows of great heroes had a unique name to them? Like Arjuna's Gandiva or Rama's Kodanda. Rama and Arjuna were certainly great archers. Even Karna's bow had a name. It was called Vijaya. It's possible that these bows were customized to the abilities and requirements of the archer. It was made into their signature weapon. That's probably why each of them had a different name. On the other hand, we don't find references to the names of the gadas of, say, Bhima or Duryodhana. According to the epic, Arjuna was skilled in the use of all kinds of weapons, including swords, spears, and maces. But it was the magic he could do with his bow and arrow that made him the warrior par excellence. He even had the ability to use his bow with both his hands. This ability gave him the name Savyasachi, which means ambidextrous, a person who could use both his hands equally well. The second reason why I think Arjuna is hailed as the greatest hero of the epic is explained by his character, his ability to focus, and his devotion to his guru. These aspects are captured in two stories that are told about him in the epic. Both of them are quite well known, so I'll narrate them in short here. One is, of course, the popular story of the test that Drona gave the Pandavas and the Kauravas after their military training was over. The story goes that as part of their test, the princes were asked to shoot a bird made of wood placed on top of a tree. When each of the princes came forward to take position, Drona quizzed the Kuru princes on what they saw. All the princes except Arjuna answered that they saw the surroundings, the tree, and the bird. But it was Arjuna who showed the focus required to shoot the bird. He answered that his eyes could see only the bird and nothing else. Drona was extremely pleased with the focus shown by his student and blessed him to become the greatest warrior of his times. But apart from his focus and his ardent desire to excel, what made Arjuna an absolute favorite of Drona is narrated in another popular story. In that story, once when Drona went to have his bath in the river, he was caught by an alligator that tried to drag him along into the river. Seeing this, it was Arjuna who responded with extraordinary swiftness and killed the alligator by shooting his arrows. Drona was immensely pleased with his student's quick response that he granted Arjuna the celestial weapon, Brahmashira. Arjuna was also Krishna's favorite Pandava. Krishna always regarded him as his best friend. Arjuna was clearly the iconic hero of the ancient world and remained a favorite of several kings across the Indian subcontinent. Arjuna is also a very popular figure in the regional versions and variants of the epic, which sort of underlines his universal appeal as a mass military hero. Arjuna's popularity is evident from the fact that he was the only Pandava who was given several names or epithets such as Jishnu, Falguna, Bhivatsa, Vijaya, and so on. In fact, the epic mentions 14 different names for Arjuna, which is probably the second highest after Krishna himself, who is referred to using 1,000 different names by Bhishma later in the epic. Friends, so that was an introduction to Arjuna the archer. In my next video, we shall take a look at yet another great archer from the epic, Arjuna's opponent in fact, yes, Karna, and his grand entry into the epic story. So do stay with me on this epic journey as we unravel newer and newer layers of the greatest story ever told. Till we meet again, it's Tara, bye-bye, take care.
ah